They say the sun will come back at midnight, after all, my one love. But we know how the minutes fly out into the dark trees and vanish, like the great ohias and honey creepers. And we know how the weeks walk into the shadows at midday. At the thought of the months, I reach for your hand. It is not something one is supposed to say. We watch the bright birds in the morning. We hope for the quiet daytime together. The year turns into air. But we are together in the whole night, with the sun still going away and the year coming back. Hello, and welcome to the final episode of Words That Burn for 2025. Today's poem is The Solstice by American poet W.S. Merwin. This episode is published just short of the actual winter solstice, the 21st of December, also known as the shortest day of the year. The reason I've put it out now is that I always find the solstice a more fitting and natural end to the cycle of the year than the 25th or even the 31st of December. With the coming of the shortest day, a natural amount of reflection and taking stock seems to creep in. It is a moment to look back, free of the season's revelry and the endless distraction that accompanies it. Your own response to this day may be a matter of perspective. On the one hand, you might be a little bit pessimistic. It is the darkest day of the year. It is the end. But on the other hand, if you choose to be more of a glass half full kind of individual, from this point on, the days are only going to get brighter and brighter. It is a lovely moment, one that embodies both closing and renewal. It is a day often eclipsed by Christmas proper and the New Year. The quiet, reflective, and overlooked nature of this day is crystallized very elegantly by this poem, though you'd expect no less from W.S. Merwin. William Stanley Merwin was a near ideal embodiment of contemporary American poetry. Throughout his illustrious and lauded career, Merwin was mentored by and collaborated with numerous titans of American poetry. W.H. Auden was a champion of his early poetic career. His praise for Merwin was mainly around the young poet's dedicated use of traditional forms and his commitment to turns of phrase that even for 1952 were considered somewhat old-fashioned and classic. The sense of classicism extended beyond the form on the page to the themes and images that the young poet would use in his work. While studying at Princeton, he was awarded the Yale Young Poets Prize for his first collection, The Mask of Janus. As that title might suggest, much of the poems within it were influenced by classical mythology. Gods, titans, and heroes who were tragic and epic in equal measure filled the lines of his early work. This early formalist approach, though, would prove only a footnote in Merwin's poetic career. He would go on to become an experimental voice that paid far less attention to metre and traditional forms, choosing instead to focus on altogether more philosophical themes. Primarily, the cost of humanity's time on Earth and his own relentless search to remedy that. If you read much of the poetry in his initial shift away from classicism, you'll notice that it took a long time for Merwin to recognise that search as something worthwhile. For much of the 1960s, 70s and early 80s, his poetry and its content can come across as very stark, something bordering on the precipice of bleak. During the 1960s, the United States waged war in Vietnam. The sheer horrific reality of the news footage that came back from that conflict and the daily recounting of the atrocities committed by American troops had a profound effect on Merwin. This new, relentless reality would inspire Merwin to release arguably his most famous collection, The Lice, in 1967. The Vietnam conflict was a watershed moment for the poet, but also for America as a whole. Merwin turned from traditional, structured poetics to a more observational, grounded style. Academic John Freeman encapsulates this shift when he writes, "Merwin trades myth for the hard facts of the real world. It is a key transition for a poet whose later work would look so seriously and harshly at the capacity human beings have for destruction, not just in Vietnam, which he would vehemently oppose, but in the natural environment. The natural world would become Merwin's muse forevermore. More importantly, conserving and protecting that world would fuel him for decades. Like any born-again activist, the initial stage of radicalization is one of fury and cynicism. His poetry would have a particular eye for destruction. It is only later that Merwin would find his way back to something resembling optimism. The duality of destruction and beginning would come and take centre stage in his work. His writing would focus on how one often followed the other in an endless cycle. His love affair with the natural world would make it impossible for him to remain gritty and cynical. In the preface to one of his collected works, the second 4 books of poems by W.S. Merwin, Merwin himself rejected the notion of pure cynicism in poetry writing. He stated, "Poets have been known to be smug about their fine uselessness, but the Vietnam War led many poets of my generation to try and use poetry to make something stop happening. We will never know whether all that we wrote shortened that nightmare by 1 hour, saved a single life, or the leaves on one tree. But it seemed unthinkable to many of us not to make the attempt and not use whatever talent we had in order to do it." Despite the free verse and experimental nature of the poetry that would consume his career eventually, Merwin never fully abandoned the formalist approach he'd been trained in. There were always glimmers of structure to be found, even in his most obscure images. The Solstice is a wonderful example of this. Firstly, the structure of each stanza remains consistent. A long first line followed by 3 continually shortening lines. A delicate nod to the dwindling and shortening daylight of December 21st. Then there is the imagery of the poem, a constantly flickering thing. It never lingers too long on a single concrete thought. It evokes that flash of the sun dipping below a hill, or the briefest glimpse of light before the shortest day of the year draws to its close. The concepts listed swing from the universal and objective to the quietly intimate. And yet holding it all together are the 6 stanzas, each made up of 4 simple lines. It grounds us as readers, ensuring we never get too lost in Merwin's words. The entire thing is a balancing act, as the first stanza attests. "They say the sun will come back at midnight after all, my one love." There is hope in that opening line. The sun will come back. The title lets us know that the reign of the sun has been its most short-lived on Midwinter's Day. That being said, we don't have to worry about it being gone forever. It is coming back at midnight. We then realise that Merwin's speaker isn't addressing us at all, but rather their one love. In the space of 3 lines, the scale of the poem has slipped from the universal to the personal. The inclusion of the phrase "after all" hints at the cyclical nature of the poem. It makes the statement, "the sun will come back," seem more fact than hopeful prediction. After all is a phrase applied after countless occurrences of the same thing. The 21st of December is always the shortest day of the year, and the days will always start to grow lighter directly after. And yet, there is a small seed of doubt sown in that first stanza, right at the very beginning, we encounter the phrase, "they say," showing that our speaker is basing this hope on what someone else has said, not necessarily what they themselves believe. Uncertainty, hope, and doubt all clash together at once in this opening stanza, a cascade of simultaneous emotion. We launch directly into stanza 2, but we know how the minutes fly out into the dark trees and vanish. The earlier allusion to hope is somewhat shattered by this stanza. The cosmic scale of the sun is gone. Instead, our speaker and their other share a dark and tragic secret. We know how the minutes fly. The "we" opening this stanza stands in direct opposition to the "they" in the previous one. Merwin creates a gorgeous sense of secrecy in this notion of us versus them. The darkness and shadow of the solstice are embodied fully here, the dark trees standing as their representative. The final word of this stanza is vanish. It almost strikes us as readers. Vanish, to disappear without trace, almost irrevocably. There is something devastatingly swift about that word. There is a sense of loss, but most importantly, a sense of ending attached to it. That ending itself is unsettling. We feel as though time is running out. This idea of ending or slipping away was a hallmark of Merwin's poetry. It became a fixation of sorts for the poet from the lice onward. As his awareness of the ecosystem around him grew, so too did his sense of its fragility. He was so synonymous with endings that the Atlantic dubbed him the poet of premature endings. He would observe these premature endings, these losses of the natural world all around him. Towards the end of his life, he was obsessed with them. His love of the natural world is made clear as we follow the speaker's conversation in the third stanza. Like the great ohias and honey creepers, and we know how the weeks walk into the shadows at midday. These opening words for the third stanza may seem alien to readers not native to Hawaii or familiar with its flora and fauna. Ohias are a type of tree native to Hawaii, and at one point could have been seen in abundance there. Unfortunately, a fungal infection branded as rapid ohia's death has decimated the tree in recent decades. Honey creepers are another native Hawaiian plant that has suffered a similar fate. Such themes of ecological collapse become the focus of Merwin's work from the 80s onwards. This was spurred on by his having fallen completely in love with Hawaii due to his own conversion to Zen Buddhism. His conversion in the 70s would inspire a wave of interest in Asian poetry and particularly translation for Merwin. This newfound rabbit hole fueled even more experiments from Merwin with his style. The short and brief nature of these stanzas in the solstice are inspired by the minimalist traditional verse of Japan. Naturally, watching the rapid erosion of flora would inspire this simile for disappearance. The speaker continues confiding in their partner about the fleeting nature of time. We know how the weeks walk into the shadows at midday. More flickering imagery tied to the solstice with stretching shadows, a symbol of impermanence in themselves, showing the trickling sand in the hourglass. I love that this poem never bashes us over the head with its ties to the solstice, but gently affirms its connection using subtle imagery and gentle repetition. That subtlety continues as we reach the midway point of the poem, and the verse takes a breath of sorts and forms a new idea in the fourth stanza. At the thought of the months, I reach for your hand. It is not something one is supposed to say. The speaker has the most human response to dwindling time and the oncoming dark. He reaches for the hand of the one he loves the most. It is the simplest act of vulnerability, one that is repeated over and over again in the human experience. It is natural to grasp tighter when we feel things slipping, and the dark always makes us more introspective, sometimes a little fearful. Then there is an oddly repressed response. It is not something one is supposed to say. There is a hesitance in the speaker here. They are not sure if this hand-holding is a transgression. There is the first hint of something autobiographical for Merwin in the text here. Merwin did not usually go the route of the confessional poet. He did not insert an I speaker into every poem. However, when asked about this omission, he stated, "I had a rather repressed childhood. I was brought up never to say no to anybody, never to say I didn't like something, and never to talk back." He was raised in a strict religious household that forbade emotional expression and serious introspection. The whole stanza then could be a testament to the fragility of Merwin's own vulnerability and connection to others well into his adult life. The poem moves into the 5th stanza. We watch the bright birds in the morning. We hope for the quiet daytime together. The year turns into air. The scene Merwin is creating is coming into focus now, sharpening to show the speaker and their love watching the darkness of the solstice recede. Yet another glimmer of light at the end of the tunnel. They have survived this darkest night, and it feels, if only for a moment, that they may be all right. We hope for the quiet daytime together. They want a day without upset. The quiet life, essentially. The priority of the speaker is becoming clearer to themselves. They have moved from worrying about the approaching darkness to a kind of gentle acceptance that time, no matter what we may wish, is always running out. And that is okay. I spoke a little earlier about how different people have different perspectives on this day. The speaker's perspective seems to have shifted from the previous stanzas. They were speaking about their experience of loss earlier, but now they are almost looking to the future. Merwin's ecological love is there in the gentle birds at the start of the stanza. It is interesting that it is those creatures that give this speaker something to hope for. It reinforces one of the poet's great beliefs during his life, that humanity's separation from nature would be nothing short of detrimental to our species. He was once asked why he felt humanity's connection to nature was so essential, and he replied, "The connection is there. Our blood is connected with the sea. It's the recognition of that connection. It's the sense that we are absolutely, intimately connected with every living thing. We don't have to be sentimental and pious about it, but we can't turn our backs on that fact and survive. When we destroy the so-called natural world around us, we're simply destroying ourselves, and I think it's irreversible." I think this innate understanding of humanity's connection to its environment makes Merwin the perfect man to talk about the winter solstice. I mentioned at the top of the episode that I feel the solstice was a better way to mark the end of the year. My own opinions may be to do with the fact that the 21st of December holds a huge amount of significance in the Irish calendar, especially in regards to Newgrange. It is a time of year that pays close attention to the actual balance of the seasons and the natural light cycle that is inherent to them. In recognising the solstice, a natural ending and subsequent beginning point for the year, we reaffirm our connection with nature. That beautiful cyclical point is fully embraced in the 6th and final stanza. But we are together in the whole night, with the sun still going away and the year coming back. Despite the long night, it's a little bit more bearable for the speaker because they have gone through it with their beloved. The final lines of the poem encapsulate the never-ending nature of time and year. The pair are constantly watching the sun still going away and the year coming back. On even the darkest day of the year, there was always sun just around the corner. I love this image, and I think of it as a little zoetrope. Those spinning machines that use single images in rapid rotation to simulate movement. If you were to take every year there had ever been and place the cycle of light on its own zoetrope, the loop would be a never quite ending and beginning of light, like a flame in the dark, a candle dimming and flickering and flaring all to itself. It is a testament to W.S. Merwin and his ability to use deeper ideas to explore humanity's place in the world. At this time of year, when things draw to a close, it's natural to feel that we may not have accomplished everything we wanted. For as many people that are looking forward to January and a fresh start, there are just as many people who feel a sense of defeat in December. More than that, 2025 seems to be a year where everything got much darker far too quickly. We are all bearing witness to genocides taking place in Palestine, horrific conflicts laying waste to the Democratic Republic of Congo. All of us have witnessed a far-right political climate take shape that no human being with any amount of empathy wants to see take hold. At points this year, defeat seemed the only reasonable emotion. But we simply cannot stop. Much like this poem, even when it is dark, there are glimmers of hope. This poem, The Solstice, is a reminder that the sun will always be coming back around, and there will always be another chance to get it right. W.S. Merwin saw the rise of capitalism and environmental destruction in his lifetime. Despite that, he never gave up and worked tirelessly towards protecting and improving the world he lived in. I'm hopeful that some way we might be able to do the same in 2026. I would like to take a moment to thank each and every one of you for listening to Words That Burn this year. I've received a lot of wonderful support over the course of 2025. I've also had the chance to interview some amazing guests as well. I truly appreciate all the comments, reviews and messages that I've received, and I'm looking forward to bringing you even more in 2026. I wish you all a very happy solstice and a good 2026, whatever that looks like for you. What did you think of this poem? As always, this is my interpretation and I'd love to hear yours. You can reach me directly by email at wordsthatburnpodcast@gmail.com or through the podcast website www.wordsthatburn.com. I am on Instagram and TikTok and Blue Sky and Threads. You can find all of those linked below in the description. If you would like to read the script for this week's podcast, complete with citations and sources, please check the Substack link in the description. Words That Burn is written and produced by me, Benjamin Colopy. Thank you for taking the time to listen to the podcast once again.